It really just fits my butt nice.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dad Bods and Beards. We have got a special one for you, and it's going to be kind of part of a new traveling segment we're going to do as we get some bigger guests on the show, like we did with Zach Levi and Josh Altman. We are in the studio, in Jimmy Rex's studio. Thanks for having us here, Jimmy. I guess thanks for having us so we can have you. I don't know if that's
it works out perfect, man.
But it's going to be a special episode, not just because we're sitting down with Jimmy, but he's a veteran in the podcast game. You're saying 650?
About that, yeah.
Holy cow.
So not very many.
We're at 73, and I thought that was a lot. But like always, before we get going, I want to mention our sponsor, Mountain Ops. We are just kicking off the Conquer 90 challenge with Mountain Ops.
I got to sign up today.
Yeah.
It's the last day.
It's the last day to do it. It's a 90-day challenge sponsored by Mountain Ops, just to improve your
You have to take your shirt off and take a picture.
Oh, nice.
It's the last thing
like
I wanna
75
do.
hard, kind of.
Yeah, but not as...
They want to show it.
not as toxic. We did 75 hard, and it worked. We both lost weight, but then some of it came back. So, this one is pretty cool. It helps with not only your physical health and your emotional health, but your mental health, things like that, and spiritual health too, if you're into that. And go check out any of the amazing products on mountainops.com. Use the code DADBODS at checkout. And like always, you will help provide a meal to a family in need when using Mountain Ops. So,
And I will say this. You just said if you're into that with the spiritual side, spirituality does not necessarily mean God. It means holistic self. So I think everyone needs to meditate, all that kind of stuff. So it's more of a holistic self of taking where you are now, where you want to be, and kind of map that out. That's kind of when you think of that.
he's got 5 degrees, if you can't tell. He just spills it out there. But no, dude, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, it's
And
great to be here, man.
You got a killer studio. I like this a lot.
Thank you.
And the chair's really comfy.
Yeah.
These are the Joe Rogan chairs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the secret to life, right? Who's doing it the best and copy them.
It really just fits my butt nice.
Yeah.
Well, I say, I mean,
Like I said.
when he's sitting down for 3-hour interviews, dude,
Yeah, you better have a
you
comfy
better have
chair.
something ergonomic.
Well, like Tuesdays, so today is a Tuesday. That's my busiest day. I do a coaching call with a group of 50 at 11. I have another call at 1 o'clock with up to 300 guys, and I have another call at 2 o'clock. So it's like, yeah, I'm sitting in this studio for hours on end.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I have to make sure I've got a chair that's going to support that.
So how many episodes are you putting out a week on average?
Of my podcast?
Yeah.
Just depends. I've never gone more than 7 days without putting one out. So some weeks I'll do 1, some weeks I'll do 2, and then some weeks I'll do 3. It just kind of depends on where I'm at and kind of, you know, I try to have, I got about 5 different types of episodes that I'll do. I do famous people because they bring you a lot of clout and they allow you to get other high, you know,
So like us.
visible. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
When people see us, they're like, dang.
Exactly.
Overrated.
Yeah, and then I got like my friends, right? And then, or members of my community, my men's group. And then I'll do like just experts in their field, you know? And those are a lot of my favorites. They're people that you wouldn't have heard of them, but they're the best in the world at what they do kind of thing. And then I'll do other episodes. It's like whatever's relevant to right now and just stuff like that. And then sometimes I do solo episodes. So it just kind of depends on whatever I'm kind of feeling. But I usually put out, on average, I think last year I did 107 episodes. So it gives you an idea. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is more. I mean, you're almost 2 a week average at that point, right? See, I think that's the fact that it's the two of us. We never do a solo episode. Solos, I guess, are more like when it's just him and I talking. We aren't having guests on.
I do that
But
for
dude,
Copper Johns, but that's
Yeah,
it.
see, I admire that though, because like I can talk a lot, but I don't know if I can keep a conversation going with myself. So that's probably a learning curve, I bet.
Yeah, it's just you approach it differently, right? Like if I have a big guest on, I'll study for 4 or 5 hours. I'll usually try to listen to other podcasts they've done. I'm going to make sure I know all the, you know, I did Roger Clemens earlier this year and I studied him for probably 10 hours. And even at the end of the podcast, he turned to his son, was standing there kind of helping him with, you know, just he's kind of his social media manager guy. And he goes, you need to meet with him, find out exactly what he does, because this is the most prepared interview I've ever been in. Like, he loved it. He's just like, this dude, you know. There's actually a really funny trivia question. It was something along the lines of like, oh, gosh, it was, I can't remember now, but it was like, who was the last something home run? And like the last Yankee to hit a home run something, and you'd think it's going to be some random answer, and it's Roger Clemens, you know, as a hitter. But anyway, and so he just loved that I knew this, and just stupid stuff like that. But I just, you know, if I get time with one of these really special people that I think has changed the world, or somebody that motivates me or inspires me, I'm going to make sure I take advantage of the time. So I just never want to show up unprepared. But with a solo episode, it's your own notes and it's your own thoughts, and you got to really put into it. But when you've got a guest, you just study and then kind of let it go where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where our dynamic is he does a lot of the studying, and I'll binge watch a lot of the content of a guest that we're on, and then he comes to the table with a bunch of questions, and then I tend to steamroll him and have my own. So
Perfect.
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does.
yeah,
I'm joking. But hey, you have a tattoo on your arm.
I do.
And why don't you tell everyone what it is and what it means? Because that's kind of what you do.
Yeah, so it's called, it says we are the they. It's funny because I never thought I'd be a tattoo guy, but I had an experience. I got the opportunity 7-8 years ago. I got to go undercover 13 times with a couple different groups, local groups here that would go undercover in other countries and help rescue kids that were being sex trafficked. And we did an op in Central America, super dangerous one. We were able to take down, I think, 13 or 14 people. We rescued a bunch. And when we were coming back, and these guys were pretty dangerous. Like there was in that whole activity, there's like bad guys and there's like evil guys.
Oh yeah.
And it's different, right? The evil guys had the organization. They would kill you. They were the ones that actually kidnap kids, things like that. Whereas
bad guys are money motivated.
Yes, and they're usually, they're pimping out their niece or something. Or maybe like one time we arrested an 8th grade school teacher that used her position in school to get girls into this and things like that. So but so we did this op and we took these guys down. Sorry, we rescued on that one like 14. We arrested like 3 or 4 guys. But anyway, long story short, we're coming back and I'm telling my girlfriend about it in the truck. She picked me up from the airport. And I'm like, this story was crazy. Like, they had guns on them. Like they had a perimeter set. Like this was a big takedown. And it was this beautiful, crazy experience. And I'm telling her about it. She pulls over the truck and kind of surprised me. She's like, hey, I don't want you to do this anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? Did you not just hear what I said? Like we just rescued these kids. We did this takedown. She goes, I know, but it's super dangerous and it's a bad environment. I was like, I know, but this is going to be part of my life's mission now. And she says, well, why can't they just go do it? And without even thinking, I said, there is no they. We are the they. And when I said that, I was like, oh, damn. It like shot shivers down my spine. And I was like, oh, that's going to be my model for life.
2x4 to the back of the head of like, oh, gosh.
Yeah, because people all the time are like, man, somebody needs to do something about this, or like somebody needs to help these people. And it's like, wait, like who? Like it's you. Like, and so that's kind of the model. So when I started my men's group, I named it that because it's kind of that same concept of like, we want to be the change that we want to see in the world.
Yeah. Jeez, that's cool, man. So I was wondering about that. I'm glad you asked that. Like, where does the we are the they come from?
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
And we're just dive deep into it. Let's just start.
Beautiful.
So we're talking, one of your things, I have a bunch of questions right here. And you address significantly, you deal with men a lot, expressing emotions and things like that. But you deal with, it was talking about vulnerability. I'm looking about this.
What's the power of, or why is vulnerability? So my program has 3 pillars, and one of which is vulnerability. You could just ask it that way if you want to.
No, here it is. So loneliness is a significant issue among men today. How can building authentic connections contribute to improved mental health? And what steps can men take to foster these relationships? Because I don't know, there's we just got a message today. I did, and I sent it to a little group that we're part of. And he was just talking about how he's been struggling, but because of this podcast and because of other things in that he's been able to push and try to grow from it and all this. So, but there's a ton of guys who are lonely. There's a ton of guys who feel like they're lost and they don't know how to get back to it and get that connection.
Yeah, I mean, we have more availability to people than we've ever had, but less connection than ever, right?
Yeah.
And, I personally, I don't feel lonely when I'm alone. I enjoy my alone time. I feel lonely when I'm in a room of people that don't understand me or people that are staying on the surface with the conversations or just there's no depth to any of the relationship. And so I think the problem that we have is when we're all living in this world where we're trying to, the 2 biggest fears that everybody has is I'm not lovable and I'm not enough, right? And so we show up and here's how it usually, comes out from men. They'll be at a party or an event or, say a business networking thing or whatever. People start talking about their business or their money or their car, or their girls or whatever the thing is. What they're really saying is like, please love me. I promise I'm worthy to get to know, right? And so, but it doesn't come off that way. And so unfortunately, most men and women, but they don't even feel the love they're getting because they're wearing a mask. And unfortunately, all they're showing people is that mask. And so even when people do pour into them, they don't feel it because they're thinking they just love this version of me that I'm showing. So what I try to do in my program, we have 3 pillars, which is vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And the whole purpose of that is you know, have you ever met somebody that you pour into them so much, and it's like a bucket with holes in it? No matter what you do, they don't fill it, right? It's because there's this mask on and they don't trust the love they're getting. So if I can get you to be a little bit vulnerable and show the parts of you that think that make you unlovable. And for everybody, that's different. Like my number one thing I hear in my program is like people say, like, I always thought if people knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. And I think most guys have had that thought in their lives.
I have.
Yeah. And so what's cool, the superpower of vulnerability, the reason why it's so beautiful is every single time in this program, or, you know, in general, you do have to be careful. You can't be vulnerable with the wrong people. And a lot of times we've been punished for being vulnerable, right? Like you did express your feelings and somebody used it against you. So you have to be in these safe containers. And that's the one role in my program is like everything that's here stays here. It has to be, I always say, like, you can't change anybody. Your only job is to create a container safe enough for people to be inspired to change themselves. And that container is everything. And so if I can create a container of vulnerability, I get to ask this question, like, well, how do you do that? And it's by opening up and being vulnerable first. So when my guys come together as an example, I go first and I share stuff. And it's not like, oh, when I was 12, like this happened to me. No, it's like, hey man, this is something that happened last week. I screwed up and now, you know, I'm single. My girlfriend ended up breaking up with me or whatever it might be. Or it could be something as simple as like, hey, I'm really scared right now that like what I'm doing with, you know, this isn't going to work. And I'm afraid that like you guys won't get the experience that you want. It's a lot of pressure, like whatever, just truly being vulnerable about something in that moment. And then I invite other people to get vulnerable too. And by the time I tell everybody when they show up is like, you're going to be popping out of your chair to talk because this is going to be the first time maybe in ever, or at least in a long time, that you felt safe to truly take your mask off. So then guys get up and they start sharing stuff, and it's stuff that isn't that pretty. And sometimes it's like, you know, about their porn issue, or maybe it's like he cheated on his wife, or maybe it's like my wife cheated on me. Maybe it's like, hey, I haven't talked to my kids in 3 years, you know, and they want nothing to do with me. Or it's just that thing that you think is going to make you unlovable. We had one guy get up a couple of months back, and we did a breathwork session. And in that breathwork session, he had this really special experience. But he got up and shared in front of the group, and he's bawling his eyes out. And he says, guys, I just had this conversation in that breathwork with my son that he said, I've never told anybody this besides my wife. But 6 years ago, I got her pregnant when we were dating. And I convinced her to get an abortion. And I've every day since lived with this. And he said, I've been suicidal for the last couple of years because I just can't get over the shame of what I did. And they actually have 3 other kids now. And he's just bawling. And he's like, in this breath work, I got to talk to my son. He said that I'm good. And he's like sharing this experience. And instead of being shamed, which is what we think will happen, one other guy comes up, he says, man, I had to do an abortion when I was, you know, or I chose to get an abortion when I had to get my girlfriend an abortion when I was younger. And all of a sudden we're hugging this dude, and he's, you know, and all of a sudden he gets on the other side and he goes, oh, I'm just worthy of being loved. And so we all have these things that we think like, oh my gosh, if anyone ever knew this about me. And it's crazy, the stuff that people will share. I've probably had 25 guys share being sexually assaulted when they were kids. They've never told anybody, or maybe very few people. A lot of them never told their wives, never told their parents. And they'll get up and they'll share it. And then when they feel loved in that state, they'll do anything for those people because they've never truly felt that love. It's always been this mask that they've had to wear. And so when you can get beyond that, that creates real connection. And all of a sudden you're not afraid to, like, you don't have to be okay all the time. And
what happens, let's say, like, you have John down the street who is secluded, isolated. He isn't a part of your group. He isn't a part of anything. He doesn't feel worthy to be a part of anything. What do you tell that person to be able to find that person or find that group and do something about it?
Yeah, so whatever you want more of in life, give it away. So if you want more love, start sharing more love. If you want more money, I actually believe you should give away money, because you then show the universe that you don't find it scarce. It's in abundance. And so you have enough to give to those in need, and the world will find a way. The universe will find a way to.
Yeah. You and me both, brother.
But so if you want more friendship, go out and start being a good friend. It really is that. And it requires a level of vulnerability, right? Like, men are so afraid of rejection, and you have to change the way you look at what rejection is. Because if you think rejection is personal and that they're rejecting you as a human being, you know, and it's kind of the irony of like the way that we treat each other as humans. It's very rarely about you. And when I was younger, I had a lot of situations where I was trying to date a girl and it didn't go well. And I took it personally. I thought I was the problem, right? I really like I remember like at 30 years old, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do steroids now because I need to be more attractive. And I'm like, you try to make
Which
more
is a
money.
thing.
Sure. And you try to make more money. And if I can just have more status, and you start doing all these wrong things, when in reality, like you can look back on it and it's like, oh, that girl was going through a heartbreak, and oh, that girl was hooking up with my roommate the night before. It turns out like this was like, it's nothing to do with you. And so like when somebody's mean to you, like let's say you're driving and somebody yells at you or something because you accidentally didn't like see them and you switched lanes, right? And they're yelling, and like that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Like, and so if you can get your head wrapped around like the way that people treat you really doesn't have anything to do with you, then that guy, and it's practicing though, because somewhere along the line, he was punished for coming out of his shell. He was punished for putting himself out there socially, right? And so you want to find good people. I mean, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it is hard to find men that are, willing to open that space for you.
Fun fact. So we work with a guy named Brock, Painter. Brock,
Painter.
And he's kind of like a life coach, a coach for me. I've lost 50 pounds with him.
Congrats.
And I still have 50 more to go. And then I'm going skydiving.
Hell yeah. 255, is that what you got to get under?
250, yeah.
Yeah. I take my guys skydiving, so I always, the place we go, they said 255. So
Yeah, so my goal is 250, so I can go.
Yeah, we've been working with him for about 4 months. You're down 50, I'm down about 40.
Yeah.
Good for you
He's
guys.
kicking our butt.
Awesome.
I'm a little more than 50.
What are you going to call the podcast once you guys get your bodies
Sexy
right?
sons of
Jack
guns.
instead of dad bods and beards, Jack bods and beards. But
No, but the reason why I brought that up is because he is talking like this past session I did with him, like it's more of a like sometimes it's almost therapeutic, sometimes it's like, hey, we need to do this. It's like, what the crap, man? You need to start doing this instead. We talked a little bit, we meditated a little bit and talked about being ashamed. And because there's some things in my life that I'm, like I don't want to take my shirt off yet. And I because I'm going on this cruise as a family, and I'm like, I have to take my shirt off when I go swimming.
The good news is nobody on a cruise usually looks
Exactly.
good, so you should be all right.
Most of cruise people are there for the buffet, buddy.
But I'm wearing the dad bod shirt, so I'm going to have to be like,
Yeah.
No, but we were talking about it, and so we did a thing, and he talked about being ashamed, and it's more protective. It's protecting you because it loves you. And so I really like what you said, because a lot of the things is we were hurt, and so the feelings that we have are valid because it loves us. That feeling loves us, so it's protecting us. And so thank you for sharing that, because I think that's valid. And so one thing I had to learn is, why am I ashamed? And why do I feel this way? And as soon as I realized like it loves me and it's protecting me, I'm like, oh, it's totally different.
Well, and the way you get rid of the shame is by being around safe people, and then you share things with them, right? And instead of them, like if you're around the wrong people and you take your shirt off and go, okay, I'm going to go for it. And if you're around a bunch of assholes, they're going to start making fun of you, right? And all of a sudden the shame just, but if you're around good guys and people that support you, and if you've opened up already and here's where vulnerability comes in. If you're with a group of guys and you go, guys, I wasn't going to come because I don't want to take my shirt off. I'm embarrassed. And I know we have a heated pool outside for part of this event, and I'm kind of terrified. If you open up to guys about that, I guarantee you there's not a guy there that's going to use that against you. If it is, you're just in the wrong room, right? And so like that's the kind of stuff that's like so beautiful. And I have a guy in my group right now. We're going up to Bear Lake next week, and we're going to do the cold plunge into Bear Lake.
Oh, wow.
And he doesn't know how to swim. And he's like, hey, I'm really like, I don't want to be peer pressured into this. And I said, hey, just open up to the group and tell him about it. And then nobody will peer pressure you. And he did. And he's like, and everyone's like, oh, bro, like, yeah, man, just come support and like whatever. We're all good. He's like, I don't want 50 dudes pressuring me to get in. I can't swim. And I'm like, well, start there. Or like,
well, what's
hey,
funny
who the hell doesn't know how to swim?
What's funny is we're talking. So I had that session with Brock, and then that evening we went and did a cold plunge and a sauna session. And I take my shirt off, and not only did I take my shirt off, I got in the tub with him and got in trouble because you're only supposed to have one person in there.
Because we do a lot of cringy comment too, or content to be funny. But yeah, then it was a brand new spot, and the guys were like, "No, get out!" I mean, they're brand new. They got all this money invested in it, and you get two giant guys climbing in one tub.
I shouldn't have done it, but I felt more confident because I understood where that came from.
Well, and look, and you want a good coach. There's two things. Like we all have a masculine and a feminine. It's the masculine wants to be challenged, the feminine wants to be supported. So you got to know like which string to pull, right? Like with that dude in that moment, I knew like, oh, he needs to be supported. Now, I'm also going to be like, dude, how the hell do you not know how to swim? Like, we're going to teach you how to freaking swim. You're a grown-ass man. It's time to learn how to swim, And, like, that's the challenge part where his mask, and if he's got a wound from his father or something, or, like, it's going to kind of trigger it.
Yeah,
and
like
then we
water
can,
phobia or
then we
something
can kind
like
of
that.
take care of that, and we can kind of work through. And this is how you, as a man, can become more of an evolved, full, better version of yourself.
Well, I like that you said that, because working with our buddy Brock, this is something that he said when he was on our show. that really hit with me. He said the best way to heal a sick dog is put him in a healthy pack. And that's been the most like, I don't even know what the word is, the most like impactful thing for me since becoming part of the groups that we're a part of. So we work with this group called Connect and Conquer that we work with quite a bit. And I feel like since starting our podcast, we've found our pack, kind of like how your pack is, the We Are the They group. And it inspires me to be a better man, inspires me to be more inspirational, because when we get these messages from guys saying, hey, I've been really going through a hard time, and your show really pulls me out of it each week when I listen to it, whether it's a funny one or a serious one. And then, like you said, being 73 episodes in versus 650 plus, there's times where it's hard to keep going, but then you get those messages and you're like, okay.
Yeah,
this is why we're doing
I'm always so grateful when I get the messages, because when you're going through a hard, sometimes it just sucks. Like
it does,
whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going through a hard day, or like you're just dealing with some stuff, and you get to rely upon those moments, or you get to remember those moments, and same thing. Like I was at the gym not too long ago, and I'm working out, and just randomly this Mexican guy standing next to me comes over and he goes, I need to talk to you. I was like, what's up, man? And he's like, your podcast, like, I think it saved my whole family, it saved my marriage. And he talked about just a podcast I did about basically how to overcome porn. And it was on my Real Men, Real Conversations episodes. And he's like, my son and me, we've talked about that 50 times. And he just went through, he's like, just thank you. And it was like, damn. Because like, I remember literally sitting down to film that, and I had just taught it to my group. So I was kind of exhausted. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to give this everything I have.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, glad I showed up for myself that day,
Yeah, it makes you feel a little, makes you feel validated of like, hey, my words aren't just falling on deaf ears. Like people, it's impacting people.
Well, I think we feel that a lot just because we're just normal dudes. Like really, like we're no one special.
Yeah.
But we've gone through a lot of crap. And so it's kind of nice when people validate and, and say, hey, what you're doing means a lot.
Yeah. So with everything we've talked about so far, I mean, your work with, saving sex traffic victims, and your massive real estate career, and the massive podcast career, and the groups, and all these different things that you're a part of. It's funny. The more influential people we talk to, the more we find out you guys are involved in a million different things. You
want to get something done, give it to the busiest person you know.
Yeah, exactly. So taking kind of all the way back, have you ever, and you don't have to share if this is too personal, whatever, have you ever had moments in your life where you attempted to be vulnerable with the wrong person and it backfired? Because we've found that, like you even mentioned it, sometimes with guys, they'll have an experience where they were vulnerable with the wrong person. It could be a spouse, it could be a family member, it could be like a parental figure, or even a best friend. And you're like, well,
sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had plenty of those experiences. I mean, we've all had best friends that have, unfortunately used things against us. I mean, I've never met someone that didn't have a friend betray him. I tried to heal an old wound with my mother a couple of years ago, and I really was intentional about it, and I wanted her to understand, like, I'm so grateful that this is the way my childhood was, because it's made me who I am. Like, there's no, I wouldn't change it, right? But I'm having this conversation, but she did not hear it that way. And I used to coach one-on-one with Neil Strauss. He's 8 New York Times bestsellers. He's incredible, and he's a brilliant man. And I was talking to him about it afterwards, because we'd meet every week. And he goes, don't expect the people that traumatized you not to re-traumatize you, like just because you're an adult now. And and it was just this eye-opening thing of like, oh, I had this expectation, and I thought if I did this right, this is what I'm going to get out of it. And that's just not what happened. And so I think, you do have to be careful. I think all pain in life comes from unmet expectations. And so whenever
I was actually going to ask that question.
Yeah. So when you put that on somebody else, like, she has her own experience, and to her, she was doing the best. I mean, she had 7 kids, and she was trying to deal with a husband that they just didn't have a good marriage, and turns out like maybe your parents just didn't have this beautiful fairy tale marriage. And to her, she had given everything. And so to hear that it didn't necessarily go the way that I thought it should have, was too much. And so she just rejected the idea. And human beings, if we can't accept the pain of something, we'll just make it wrong. So like I had a girl, a woman, I coach her husband, and she said, hey, I'd love to try to run something by you. It's just an example of this. And this is where like being vulnerable, sometimes it's still worth it. It's always worth it. I'll say that. But like she'd had a stepbrother who had molested her when they were kids, and she brought it to her parents as an adult, and the parents rejected it. They just said, no, that didn't happen. Like totally just invalidated her, right? And she was so distraught over it. And I said, can I give you another perspective? And I said, if we as humans, if something is too painful, we can't accept it. We have to reject the whole thing because the pain of it, our bodies literally will not accept that as a truth. And so your mom probably doesn't even have a choice. It's not up to her. She literally cannot accept that as a truth. And so, and she kind of just got this new perspective. And it was like, I was like, put yourself in your mom's shoes. Like, you've got this news that comes to you. And it's like, and so I was like, but you still got to express your truth. And so even some of these times where things don't go the way we want them to, the one thing you don't want to do is share something that could really be used against you. I mean, when you're being overly vulnerable, you're handing somebody a sword, right? And you're taking your armor off. And so you just want to make sure they're not going to stab you with it.
What if you have a podcast and that's all you do?
It's just share all of them.
Well, here's the beauty. If you share everything, people have nothing on you, right?
That's true.
And I'll tell you this, a coach of mine taught me this once. He said the most attractive state a human being can be in is to be 100% unapologetically themselves.
Oh, I love that.
So when you're just like owning everything, you give them nothing, right? And so it's like, come at me. I've already probably shared it 10 times on my podcast. It's like, what do you want to say?
That's essentially like our whole platform and like my whole platform on social media, because I was diagnosed bipolar 7.5 years ago. And that's one of those ones you got to play a little close to the vest in the beginning, because there's so much like crazy connotation with bipolar, because everyone experiences like there's the depressive side, but the stuff that hits the news is the manic side. Like there was a guy earlier this year that had a manic episode at the Salt Lake airport, and he climbed into one of the turbines.
Oh, I saw that. He didn't mean to climb in the turbine.
No, he didn't.
He was trying to get on the
He
plane.
was trying to get on the plane, but he was in the middle of a manic.
Props to him for even getting out of this.
Yeah, but he was in the middle of a manic episode. And so, I mean, there's so much negative media attention. People are like, oh, someone like that should be locked up, yada, yada, yada. We should not have people like this in our society. But I mean, I was seeing things that were not real. They were real to me.
Sure.
I can still remember the way this demon chased me for years. Remember the way he looked. Remember the way he sounded. I remembered his name and everything. But it was me. It was a chemical imbalance in my brain. Now, 7 years later, I'm good. Like my treatment plan, stuff like that. I keep stuff
We're
in
really
check.
not here.
And I'm like in my basement by myself. I made up all of you. Yeah. But once I finally there was family, friends, and people I've known for years that didn't know this about me. And I finally, one day after I kind of got rolling on TikTok, on my birthday, I was like, hey, birthdays suck for me, because it's a reminder that I'm here one more year, when there was a point in my life where I almost left my wife and kids. And it was, and I started gaining traction and more followers and people like loving the authenticity of it. And so then I ran down that road. Mm-hmm. And now it's to the point of kind of like, you can't make fun of me if I make the joke first and I make it better. So I make fun of myself a lot in a positive way. Like I believe a lot in self-deprecating humor, but in like a healthy way. But I've found that as you are vulnerable and you put that out there, it's like nobody really can come at you and slam you as much as they think you can when you already throw it out there. And like you said, you don't really respond to the hate comments. I never really do either, because I just see that as somebody, I'm like, man, you just haven't gone to therapy yet, have you? Like you just have so much
it's like when everything's putting yourself in their shoes, right? Like happy people don't go on the internet and start just saying negative things.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so like anybody that's going through that, you kind of just, so I had one the other day. I'll just give you an example. So I did a toy drive here at my headquarters.
Yeah, that was awesome, by the way, dude.
Thank you. Yeah. So I partnered with some buddies of mine out of LA, Trina's kids, and we ended up the first day. So we did 16,000 toys.
Yeah,
okay.
that's nuts.
And this was the 4th year in a row we'd done it. And every other year we ended up taking the rest of the toys to, like, one year we took them to Granite School District, and one year we took them to, one of the hospitals or whatever. We had extra. And I mean, we had tens of thousands of toys. And this year, I think there's a lot of people hurting. And so we said we're going to be open from 10 to 4. Mm-hmm. And I literally we just filled up my warehouse with toys, and people just came, and we gave them a limit. I think it was like 5 per kid. We were trying to make it very generous because we didn't care. We just come get toys. And they're like, what's the catch? Like, there's no catch. You just literally come get toys. Mm-hmm. And by 2:00, we were out of toys.
I bet.
And I was kind of shocked because we never run out. And so I had to close my front door, lock it up here. And we had a couple hundred people show up and didn't get any toys. And I was like, I was sitting here and I swear to God, I was like, well, we are the they. Like, what do we want to do here? And I was like, all right. So I called up we buy them straight from the manufacturer. So we get $25, $30 toys for about $4 a toy. So we can really make,
you can stretch
go a long ways. Sure. Yeah, and these are good toys. They're like, toys you'd buy at the toy store. And I said, is there any way we can get another truckload here by Saturday so we can do this again on Monday, which was the 23rd? They said, hey, I think we can. So they get us another truck. So Sunday, I spent all day with like 20 of us unpacking all these toys from all the boxes. We set it all up. Monday, we started it later in the day because I wanted the people that were at work on Friday, the week before, so they could come get it. Right.
I like that.
And so we started later in the day. And I said specifically, I had a big podcast. A guy flew in from North Carolina to be on my podcast. I was doing a 2-hour goal setting event live that I have 2,000 people on. So I had a full day of stuff I needed to do. So I said, please do not show up before 3 o'clock. We do not want anyone here before 3. Well, I get out of my podcast, and we're sitting right here, and there's 350 people in the parking lot.
Dude.
And we're like, okay, it's game on. But here was the cool part. I mean, it took about 3 hours. We had the line going all the way around this building, 2 different ways. Every single person that came walked out with at least 4 toys per kid. Dude, and it worked. And we got, at the end, we still had 500-600 toys. We just let everyone grab the extras. Whatever, it was perfect. Well, this lady goes on my review for my business, which, by the way, has nothing to do with We're the They. We just did it at my warehouse because we had space. And she leaves a 1-star review and says, they said that they were going to have toys for us, but they said to come between 10 and 4. We came at 2 and there was no more toys. That was her review. And I literally immediately, I just went, oh, this poor lady, like in her world, this is like an acceptable thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so instead of blowing her up, which the old version of me, I'd have been like, bitch, like whatever. I just responded kindly. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry that was your experience. We did do another toy drive the next couple days later. So anybody that didn't get toys the first day could. Next year, keep an eye on my stuff and hopefully you can get there earlier. And, but I just like, how can I turn this into a positive? In my mind immediately, I was like, I'm just going to share the story real quick. And instead of making her out to be a villain, I just said, man, this is what happened. I said, if anybody wants to leave a positive review with my company, if you've ever had a good experience with us, please leave me a positive review. And I knew it was going to happen. I got like 85 good reviews, 5-star reviews, And that was like, we get to decide like how we can treat other people. I could have just totally blasted that lady and tried to feel better. But if that's where her world is right now, if that's where she's at, then like the last thing she needs me is to yell at her. And it was like kind of found the humor in it. I'm like, this is funny. Like this is my first 1-star review.
My dad shared a story with me. It's one of those like viral Facebook things that his generation shares, right? He said where a woman walking down the street carrying a completely full bucket. Guy bumps into her and she spills half the bucket. She starts immediately getting mad at the guy because she spilled half her bucket. And the analogy basically was, well, no matter what you've filled your bucket with, that's what's going to get spilled out. So if somebody bumps into you and you fill your life with a bunch of negativity and a bunch of, obviously there's situations that you can't control that put you in these negative positions. But if you fill your life with all of this, negativity and judgment and hate and all that stuff, and you get bumped, something triggers you, that's what's going to come spilling out. Whether you go home and screaming at the wife, screaming at the kids, just like blowing up, road rage, you talked about that, versus, like you said, I'm a big believer in getting back what you put out. You talked about that. Try to fill your bucket as much as you can with positivity and light and good-heartedness. Someone bumps into you, you might be like, that guy might be in a really big hurry. And he clipped me, whatever. It spilled my bucket a little bit, but we're okay.
Well, and it's a gift because it just shows you where you need to do work, right? Like, let's say it does upset you and you're with your bucket and you're like, oh, like, why did that have to trigger me or whatever else? And so like, I talk about embodiment work now a lot. It's getting out of your head, getting into your body. And it's like this moment that we have between whatever happens to us and our response, right? That moment between stimulus and response. And in that is everything. And so I teach my guys how to try to create as much space in there, as much time in there as possible, so that when something happens, you get the time to stop and make that right move. Because they say you're out of your mind when you're like raging, because you're literally thinking with the wrong part of your brain. And you can breathe your way back into the right part of your brain, but you've got to be able to stop yourself and be able to feel into your body enough to go, hold on, that's not what, you see it in Utah. I think there's been 4 road rages in the last 2 years where somebody got shot. You're driving and the one guy, he's like with his 3 kids and somebody cuts him off and he starts screaming, yelling. They pull off the freeway. Dude slams his window, scares the shit. He pulls a gun. At that point, you got to grab the gun from him. He goes to grab the gun. He shoots him. He's dead. It's like, whoa, like 45 seconds ago, you're driving your kid to football practice, It's like, you've got to be able in that moment to be able to snap out of that. And to be honest, it's the thing that I had to work the hardest on. When I was a kid, I was a little bit of a hothead. I grew up in a household where that felt normal. And, my dad was definitely that way and could very quickly get very upset. And so it was like, that felt normal to me. And it wasn't until my friends sat me down 5 or 6 years ago and they're like, bro, I don't think you understand, like, the words you have the ability to destroy. and you don't, it doesn't even bother you. Like it doesn't affect you. You don't get it, but it's like very effective for the other person. And so I've really worked super hard the last few years, gone to masterminds literally in other countries. I've really practiced this breathing and how to just feel more into my body and kind of try to figure out what's going on. Like, all right, well, where's this coming from? Why did that upset me so much? Why am I feeling this rage or whatever's coming on? And the more you can feel into it and start to, you know, go back to that little boy and be like, hey, you're actually safe, dude. Like, you're good, you know? So,
yeah.
Well, I have to kind of revert back to what we were talking about expectations. We've been blessed, I will say that, but at the same time, we've worked really hard.
of course.
And when I was 30 years old, so I'm 45 now, 30 years old, I hit like a midlife crisis. Like I got depressed. And I mean, when I say depressed, I mean depressed. And my dad has a 2 master's degrees in family psychology and child development. And he was going to be in therapy and all that. He was going to be a therapist, but then my mother got sick, and so he had to kind of revert back and just get the master's instead of the doctorates. And I went to him and I told him, and I was just telling him, like, I am like crazy depressed because I thought I would be better. I thought I would live in a better house. I thought we would be able to do all these things, that I would have all these things, and it was expectations of what I was expecting my life would be like instead of what it actually is, instead of being grateful at that moment. So now I'm going on this trip that I was talking about, and I've had this happens still. I'll go on this trip and I'm like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. They're going to do this. My kids are going to be like this. And then totally opposite. Like they're fighting in the car. Yeah. They're screaming like, I want this. I'm like, dude, I just got you this. And now you want something, you know. How do you help someone who is struggling because their expectations are different than what they're feeling or what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to steal a Tony Robbins line because he says it the best. But, you know, your life will change when you trade in your expectations for appreciation. That's it. I mean, that's everything.
That's what we're talking about.
Huge on gratitude. I love that.
What is? It's the only emotion that like zeroes out all the negative emotions. You can't be in gratitude and also be in these negative emotions, right? And so it's a way to get grounded in the present moment. It's a way to appreciate where you have. Like, I'll tell you a quick story from our call today. One of my guys, I was taking him through this exercise, and basically the premise of it is like, look, if you're not getting an answer to a problem you have, you need to ask a better question. So like, ask better questions. That's why we have our masterminds. That's why we do this. And he said, like, I've got this kid, he's, I think 16 years old. He's a great kid, but he leaves his stuff around the house and it drives me bonkers. And I keep asking him deeper questions, and he's really just like, he's, you know, and I kept saying, like, well, why does it bother you? Well, because my house is, you know, looks like it's a mess. And I said, well, and what does that mean about you then if your house is a mess? And he was trying to get some deeper stuff. And I said, all right, I'm going to take you through an exercise. I don't know where I first heard. I think Simon Sinek said it first. But he said, I said, dude, close your eyes. I said, your son's 16 years old. I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 40. I said, okay, well, the average person lives till they're 78 years old. So I want you to fast forward in your mind. You're 78 years old, 38 years from now. And you haven't seen your son that much the last 20, 30 years. He's doing his own thing. He's got his life. He's got his family, right? I said, I want you to pit yourself at 78. You're about to die. You've got very little time left. I said, I want you to think right now what you would give at 78 years old to be back in this very moment of the last time your son pissed you off by leaving something out at your house, what you would give at 78 years old to go back to that point and just be present with your son and not need him to pick up his shit. Just to be there with him and just to experience it with him again. He's like, geez Louise. He's like, I'd give anything. I said, yeah, and you're ruining the present moment because you're needing it to be this thing. And it's such a dumb thing. You said yourself he's a good kid. I was like, you would give anything to come back and just be with your son again. I go, when you see those shoes, instead of it bothering you that your shoes are out, that should be your sign that your son's here with you, that your son is spending time with you, that your son is in your home, that he's safe, that he's a good kid. He's not out doing drugs or messing around. I was like, when you see those shoes, it should be a pure gratitude for this moment that you get to, this perfect moment you get to be with your son. And he just was like, all right, I'm done. He's like, we're going to have a new way to look at this.
I think I've shared this before. Actually, I know I have. But I had a professor in college at one point where he was talking about his child and how they were on a trip to California probably, and they were at a beach, and they went back to the hotel miles and miles away. And the daughter forgot a couple of things on the beach. And she's sitting here crying, and he's like, I want to be a good dad. I'm a good dad. I want them to be proud that I'm their dad. And instead of fighting or getting mad, he went and got the shoes and the things that she forgot. And I remember thinking that, I'm just like, I love my children. And so when there's stupid things like that, I had to take a deep breath and just like, I'm grateful you're my kids.
Well, this was, it was driving him nuts. This expectation of his son needing to be different or do something different. I'm like, dude, like he's doing so many things right and you're missing it because he's a little sloppy. It's 16 years old. Guess who else was? So was I.
Everybody.
You know what I mean?
I still am.
And, but when you can change the expectation of your son needing to be different here and appreciate the fact that he's just here, the fact that you have him, the fact that he wants to be home, the fact that he's comfortable enough with his dad to leave his shit laying around. Like that in and of itself is a gift, right? And I said, dude, when you can change that, it'll change your whole world.
You know what my favorite thing is? We're talking about parents. Is my 16-year-old, my 18-year-old, even my 20-year-old. They will be on their phone. They'll be with their friends, and they'll stop what they're doing and say they love me. And I'm just like, I don't know if I would do that when I was their age. They're not embarrassed of me, and I love that.
No, you've done an amazing job, but it's
thanks.
really cool how the younger generation, I think our generation did a lot of healing to let them know that it's cool to. I probably end 15 conversations a day with "I love you." Like whether it's one of the guys I coach or my buddies or my family or whoever, like why not say it?
I love that.
So with your group, right? Obviously, you attract the type of guy that's going to benefit from your group. I'm sure you've probably had one or two that didn't really fit, right? And you just kind of law of larger numbers there. But one thing that I've noticed, because I've got 2 kids, right? We put a TV in our bedroom. Apparently, they didn't. We only got 2. You don't have 6. But my daughter is 8. My son is 6, and they got this easel for Christmas amongst a million other things. And I was home a little bit early from work, and then I was leaving to shoot a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I wrote down on there things that my family has taught me. And I wrote mommy, and I put, taught me that love and acceptance are 2 of the most important things in the world. And then my daughter Liv, that she has some very real anxiety already at 8 years old, and she has some real phobias. And I said that, listening to big feelings sometimes is more important than, just trying to make them be quiet. And then my son, creativity and spontaneity is just as important as anything else. Anyways, I just tried to do things like that. And I found that as a father, if I open up the emotion a little bit more to my kids and I just beat the I love yous into their head, in theory, not physically, it's made a bigger difference in their life. And I've shared this a few times. And then when my 8-year-old daughter comes up to me and wants to express her feelings to me, I'm like, okay, that's a win for me.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge win for me. And I've said that 100 times on our show because
don't you do the high lows of gratitudes too?
Yeah, and we do this thing where we gleaned it from Tyson's family at dinner. We'll do high, lows, and gratitudes or gratitude. What was your high for the day? What was your low for the day? What's something that you're grateful for? And it's funny listening to a 6-year-old. My high was coming home and watching, Blippi. My low was going to school. And then it's like, I'm grateful for chicken nuggets, like stuff like that. But
you're teaching
I think you are right, is that the next generation coming up is they're nuts in the best way possible, that they they're unapologetically themselves. And I think that's going to set us up for a better future if they're going to be the next group of people leading us. So I love that a lot from you. And I like a lot of what you've said so far has been very impactful, and I'm glad that you have the influence that you do, because I think we need more like that. And so one question, I kind of follow up this rant for a second. What do you do how do you combat somebody who comes up to you, or may just even in passing or whatever, that talks maybe negatively about, male vulnerability, or calling you weak, or saying, it's a wuss move, or things like that?
Yeah, I honestly, this is the funniest thing, is I don't think I've ever had a negative interaction in person around this. Like people don't.
More social media?
Yeah, and even in social media, it's only when I'm picking fights,
Sure.
And it's about sports on Twitter or something. I'm not picking fights about masculinity. I don't have those negative interactions, but if I did, if somebody came up and there's one of the cool things, this isn't a religion. I don't need people to believe the way I do. I don't care. It's like coming up and you told me my best friend's not my best friend. I don't care. I know he's my best friend. I don't care what you think. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Okay, cool. I think there's a quote that's on Twitter. It's I think it was Keanu Reeves or somebody said, I think it was Keanu Reeves, but he's like, if you think 2 + 2 = 5, awesome, man. Go ahead. Thumbs up. It's
good for you, bud.
Honestly, so when people come at me, now if I'm getting challenged and it's in a setting where I've set myself up to want to debate some things or things like that, I'm just going to share my opinion and try to understand their side of it, right? I think very few conversations. One of the gifts I have in my life is 3 of my 5 best friends, their wives are all very liberal, and one, is liberal and one's borderline liberal. And so I have very differing opinions around me that are very close. And some of my favorite things are just being able to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And when you remember to lead with love, like you probably are agreeing on the same stuff for the most part. And the things we don't, it's like, interesting that they don't see the world the same way, you know?
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like, it's just like, cool. All right. And sometimes it's just, I think this is one of the reasons why freedom of speech is so important. It's like, it at least tells you who sees the world the same as you. Freedom doesn't mean more to you than certain things we're not going to see the world the same way. We're probably not going to agree on a lot of things. You're probably going to like what I like. So I think we were playing a poker game last night here at the headquarters. We had like 25 guys here, and somebody asked the question, what percentage of Americans are vaccinated? And I think it's like 85 or 82% or something like that. I was like, that's funny, because in all of Weird the Day, we've had 500 guys through. I only know 3 that were vaccinated. Sure. And so I was like, you kind of find your tribe by just owning your truth. So it's like, whether or not I agree with you, that's fine. I don't really care. But I'm going to be authentic, because then you get to decide what relationship you want to have with me based on just knowing who I truly am. And I get to do the same thing with you.
Well, I like that, because I'm a big believer, and this is something I learned through years of therapy and psychiatry and stuff, is putting people in boxes of expectations. Mm-hmm. So I know after X amount of time with this person, including, family members, my wife, people like that, this is where our relationship exists on a day-to-day expected basis. And so then that way I know if something goes outside that box, okay, this requires a little bit of a different response, whether it's not going to bother me that much, or, okay, maybe we need to shrink that box, or we need to expand that box. And it's worked really well for me. Not that I'm saying that I'm the decider of the relationship. I'm just saying with how it.
Well, you are the decider of every relationship. Yeah. So are they, right?
Sure.
But you are too. Like, I talk about this in my book. There's 3 types of friendships that really it's important. And by the way, all 3 are fine. Just kind of like you said, it's important to know which ones are which. Mm-hmm. Like, I have friends that are simply friends of the utility. Like, I benefit your life, you benefit mine, right?
Yeah.
Like, we help each other in different things, but that's probably the extent of it. I'm not going to call you if I want to get, personal about some stuff. Then you have friendships of entertainment. It's like, we love to go do fun things together. Like, if you might be guys I want to go party with. You might be guys that I just want to go out with. Or maybe when I see you out, I love to see you. But also, like, you're not those guys. And then you have your friendships of, I call it friendship of the good, but these are like your deepest, like, you guys stand on a moral basis together, and you push each other, and you're willing to have tough conversations with each other. And it's all
2 a.m. call friend.
Yeah, exactly. But it's okay to have all 3 friends. You just know which ones are which. Mm-hmm. Don't expect your friend that's a friend of the utility to be there put them in this box, or you're going to be upset by the way they respond. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you know which ones are which, and like you said, you're adjusting it all the time, and sometimes somebody's over here, but then they're not. And so,
well, I like talking to people with different perspectives and different outlooks and different opinions, because like you said, it helps. Sometimes it's changed the way I've thought on a few different things, right? Mm-hmm. It's changed my perspective. I've grown, I've matured, and I feel like there's the extreme this way and the extreme that way, and then there's a bunch of us in the middle here of like, can everybody just like chill a little bit, and it's this group of people that we all just want to live our lives based on how we want to live our lives, and we really don't fret over how somebody else wants to live it. As long as nobody's getting hurt, like, I think it's probably more healthy than the extreme one way or the other.
Yeah.
And so, as we're wrapping up here, you said you've written a book. Did you want to plug your book? Because what we like to do is we've had quite a few people on that have written books, and we like to put them on our link page.
Sure. Yeah. It's called Be One. It comes from the Marcus Aurelius quote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one."
Cool.
And the subtitle is How to Be a Healthy Man in Toxic Times. And kind of just go through a lot of the stuff that I've learned coaching, thousands of men now, and everything that I've been through. And it's amazing. Ed Milet wrote the foreword for it. He coached me one-on-one for a couple of years, and close friend of mine. And I'm just, really proud of it. We hit the USA Today bestseller list, number 37 in the country.
Good for you.
Yeah. So, I think pick it up at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever.
Okay, cool. Are they Audible?
It's on Audible too. Yeah, I read it.
Do you read it? Okay, good.
Cool.
It's like, that's how I do stuff. Because I'm usually working in the lab or doing other things, and it's just easier for me to listen
ADHD is a heck of a thing. So I'm a book listener. So
yeah, you can eat your vegetables, or you can drink juice.
Yeah, I'm a green drinker.
Yeah.
So, quick things. I don't know if you had one more question to wrap up. Going back really quick to you talked about your relationship with your mom. A quick plug back for you is, I know we've said his name 100 times already, but Zachary Levi wrote a book called Radical Love, and he had a really tense relationship with his mom, and it goes all the way throughout the book, and then he ends the book with pretty much love for his mom and understanding the way you talked about it. So it's a quick, short, very impactful read, though, if that was something you want to look for. But as he probably wraps up with the last question, we like to leave with a challenge or like some kind of like way, like sage wisdom advice, if you have any, not to put you on the spot, kind of while he's wrapping up, to think about that, to leave with our listeners.
I know.
You looked like you wanted to ask another question.
I do.
Okay.
But if it might be too late.
Go for it.
Okay. Mental health is a big thing for us. Like it's been it's like a constant battle for me all the time. I've noticed that as I have really tried to get into my physical health and I'm doing it for me. It used to be a push where like everyone in my family was like, no, you need this. You need this. We want you around. Now I just want to not hurt and I want to be able to breathe, that type of thing. I've noticed that I feel a lot more confident about myself and all this kind of stuff. You talk about your physical health and how it helps with your mental well-being. You want to explain a little bit about that? Because there's a lot of guys who, especially here, are struggling because they work 9 to 5 or they work 12 hours or whatever, for 4/10s, and they're just beat. Yeah. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, like everything. So how do we help them, motivate them to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything will change your life quicker than getting your physical health in order. I do believe that. And so it's that important. Change is hard. I have a whole formula I do on change. I talk about this quite a bit, and I'll just give you the quick formula. But number one is you got to take a moral stand. You got to, decide, like, I want to be different. Number two is you got to change your actions, your behaviors. Like, you got to figure out, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? Number three is you got to have accountability. Number four, you got to have a community to support you. And then number five, you got to have a mentor, somebody that's been where you want to go, and it used to be where you're at, right? And so that's why I formed We Are the They, because I think it's the best way to get that formula into your life. That being said, for the average person that just is like you said, that's just trying to figure this out, mental health is one of those things that was like, you've got to start doing the activities that make you happy. Go for a walk every day. Like, you can do that. I do a 30-minute walk every day, 40-minute walk. I have a guy meets me at my door at 7 a.m. every day, somebody I coach, and we go for a walk for 40 minutes to start the day. I do it every day. They just schedule it. I got 200 guys locally that I coach, so any of them at any time can do a one-on-one with me. And that alone will change my day. Then it's like, you know what? Quit drinking alcohol. Like, that's probably not good for you. That's like a thing you can do, or drink it less, right? Then it's like, you know what? Drink more water. And then it's like, okay, quit eating McDonald's, just eat steak, like, and eggs or whatever. Like, you make these little changes, and you have to do the things that eventually make you feel good. Like, go to bed on time, wake up on time, have a friend that you can call that actually cares. And I'll end one more thing I want to share with you guys. It's in my book. It's my favorite part of my book. I've really tried to study a lot how to deal with people dealing with depression and mental health as well. And I had a buddy that it's in my book. It's on I think it starts on page 16, but he summed it up so beautifully. And basically, he essentially taught me as a friend how to show up for him, because I was the guy that wanted to coach him at first, right? And then I wanted to positive mindset him out of it, right? And when I read what he said, I was like, oh my gosh. And so now somebody asked me the other day, they said, all right, I have this friend, suicidal, whatever else, going through this, depression. What can I do? How do I show up for them? And I said, look, when you show up for them, say one thing, say, look, man, I don't have any answers. I'm not here to tell you what to do anything different. I just know this. I don't need you to be any different. And I'm not afraid of this moment. I'm not afraid to sit in this with you. That's all I can tell you. I'm just going to be here in it with you. And that's the best thing that you can do as a friend. That's the best thing you can do when you show up for somebody. They don't want, because then they get guilt over not doing better. They get guilt over you having to come out and support them. They get guilt, and it just makes it worse and worse. And so you don't need to have answers. You literally just go, dude, I don't even know why I'm here. I'm just going to be here with you. I'm going to be in this shit. I'm not afraid of it.
Can I share something?
Yeah.
No, it's personal for you, and you haven't shared it.
Okay. Go for it.
But if it is too, you can cut it out. We were having a business meeting, and Logan is going through some stuff right now that is personally killing me. Like, I have empathy, and I hate it sometimes. And anyway, we're having this meeting, and he tears up. This gentleman has to leave and take care of some stuff real quick because he got a quick call, and he had to take care of it. Logan and I are in this room by himself, and he breaks down, but he breaks down. And it was the hardest thing I've ever seen. And I didn't know what to do. I just put my hand on his shoulders and just told him I loved him. And I was rubbing his shoulder, and I didn't know. And it was not just, it was hard.
Yeah.
And I didn't say a word. And I'm glad you just said that, because I didn't know what to do.
No, and you shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. You don't have to do anything.
I just told him I loved him and I'm here for him. That's all I said. And it's just like, I love the guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's my best friend, and I hate seeing him go through stuff like this. And it's not fair. And it's not fair what people have to go through. But we do. All of us have to. And I appreciate you saying that, because it kind of validates, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do at this moment.
Well, I think that's where we get afraid of it, right? Is thinking, oh, if I say the wrong thing, I might push him over the edge. If I, and you're in your head about it, and it becomes a little bit more about like what, this weird energy, and that just makes them even more want you to go away. And, people always are like, guys, reach out to me when you're having a bad day. And I preach this I say, nobody's reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Pray in the morning, ask to be who to guided to, and then throughout the day, pay attention. If somebody comes to your mind, freaking call them. I can't tell you how many times I've called somebody, they're like, how'd you know to call me today? And I'm like, well, you were next on the list. I don't know. I don't tell them that, but it's like I'm calling 10 to 20 people a day. Like, I'm going to get a hold of somebody in their time every now and then, That's anyway.
Funny. Well, no, I'm glad you said that, and thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I mean, from the flip side of that, the response that I think I gave you in that moment was just like, just appreciate you being here, having this hard conversation, and just amongst the other stuff that I have going on, and just having you there with me. I mean, as a man, it's very few times that you sob, and that was a sobbing moment for me. I remember my face was in my hands.
Because I've seen you cry, but this was
I was emotionally spent with some stuff going on, and I didn't feel awkward sitting next to my best friend doing that, and so. You like I said that does a lot for me, knowing that I can have that moment.
Well, this is why men's friendships and men's communities are so important, because you can't do that in front of your spouse. You're going to freak out your family and kids. You probably shouldn't, as a man, break down like that in front of your wife, if I'm being honest. But thank God you have your buddy. You can, because you can break down in front of him, and then you can go home and you can still be vulnerable with your wife and tell her what's going on and talk about things or whatever.
Yeah,
else.
you can express,
but you can be the rock for her, because you still need to be able to keep her emotionally safe, right, or financially safe, whatever it might be. And so that's why it's so important to have guy friends and guy community, because sometimes when you need to just let it out, you need your men there to take care of you so that you can go home and be that rock for your family.
Yeah. Dude, this has been amazing.
I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, guys.
You're very well spoken.
Well, he's got 650 episodes,
No,
dude.
but I was telling him, like, I wish I had that talent where I could communicate. Like, you fed off of him. You used his examples into your examples. Like, dude, I'm just like, that's an expert right there. That was really cool.
Thank you.
So I love the note that we're kind of wrapping up on. If there's any other little nuggets or like sage advice that you want to drop before we wrap up.
I'm out of sage advice.
I was going to say, you've dropped a ton. But
if I didn't get you by now, I'm not getting you.
But no, Jimmy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, guys. No, thanks for what you're doing. And honestly, it matters. So appreciate you guys.
Thanks.
Well, and thanks for letting us use your studio. This is super awesome, and making time for us. Check out Jimmy's books. Like you said, you can find them on Audible, you can find them on Amazon. Check out all of the good Jimmy's doing on social media. Check out his podcast, and we will catch you guys next week.